The wind carried the dust in long, low sweeps across the dry ground as the sun sank behind a mesquite ridge, casting orange fire across the sky. In that golden hour, when the shadows stretched long and the coyotes hadn't yet begun to cry, two farmhands from the Grayson Ranch came riding down the southern trail. They were bringing in a wayward calf when they spotted her by the old stone well that hadn't drawn water in years. She stood barefoot in the dirt, her dress torn like it had been caught in a thicket, silk where there ought to be calico. Her face was streaked with sweat and earth, but even in that state, there was something about her. Not just beauty, though it was there, sharp and aching, but a stillness, like the land itself had stopped breathing around her. The younger farmhand, Eli, dismounted first. "Ma'am," he said, cautious but gentle, "are you lost?" She didn't answer, only turned her head a little toward him, her lips parted but mute. Her eyes were wide and dark, searching. After a moment, she staggered slightly and leaned against the well's stones. The older one, Tom, rubbed the back of his neck. "She looks half dead. We can't leave her out here." There weren't men used to handling the delicate or strange, but they weren't cruel either. Together, they helped her onto Tom's horse, and with barely a word spoken between them, they headed to the nearest homestead. That meant Clarabelle's cabin, a quarter-mile west, tucked into a fold of the land where the cottonwoods grew thick, and the world felt quieter. Clara was chopping kindling when the riders came. Her gray-streaked braid was looped tight against her neck, her sleeves rolled up, sweat soaking the collar of her blouse. She didn't wave when she saw them, just set the hatchet down and waited. "We found her by the old well," Eli said, nodding toward the woman. "No horse, no shoes. Thought she might need help." Clara looked the girl over, slow and unreadable. "What's your name?" she asked. The woman lifted her head, voice barely above a whisper. "Rosa." That was all she said. Clara studied her a moment longer, then jerked her chin toward the porch. "Bring her inside." The cabin was small but neat. Worn rugs softened the plank floors, and the air smelled faintly of sage and old coffee. Clara drew a basin of water while Eli fetched blankets. Rosa sank onto a wooden chair near the fire, like her bones had gone soft. The boys lingered longer than they needed to. Clara noticed. She always noticed. "She's safe now," Clara said, not unkindly. "You should head on before dark." They hesitated, but she was right, and there was something in her tone that brooked no discussion. They tipped their hats and rode off, leaving the wind to whistle low through the trees. Clara turned to Rosa once the door shut. "You running from someone?" Rosa's fingers gripped the mug of water Clara had placed in her hands. She nodded. "You in trouble?" Another nod. Then a shake. "Not the kind I made myself." That was all she said for a while. Clara didn't press. She knew a soul worn thin when she saw one. She'd once been that way herself, raw, hunted by memory and men alike. After her husband James was shot over a cattle dispute gone bad, she'd closed her doors to most of the world. The ranch hands came for eggs, sometimes for a meal, but no one stayed long. Clara didn't invite questions, and people had stopped asking them. That night, the fire crackled low, and Rosa finally dozed on the cot Clara had pulled near the hearth. Outside, a coyote called high and eerie. Clara stood at the window, staring out at the dusky stretch of land. Somewhere, out past the cottonwoods, she thought she saw movement, small, far-off silhouettes cutting against the stars. Could be nothing. Could be riders. She closed the shutters. In the silence, Clara considered the woman sleeping in her cabin. She was too well-dressed for a servant, too quiet for a thief. That kind of stillness came from fear, but also from training, like someone who'd learned to make herself invisible when danger came close. Clara added another log to the fire and leaned back in her chair. She hadn't expected company. She certainly hadn't expected someone like Rosa. There was trouble coming. She could feel it deep in her bones. But Clarabelle had never been one to run from trouble. Not when it came knocking. Outside, the wind shifted. A horse whinnied in the distance, just once. Clara didn't move. The desert had a way of bringing things to your door you thought you'd left behind. And tonight, Clara reckoned, something was on its way. The rain came in slow at first, just the tapping of a few drops on the roof. But the sky had gone the color of bruised fruit, the kind of color that meant thunder was coming soon, dragging the storm behind it like a funeral cart. Inside the cabin, Clara moved with a quiet, deliberate rhythm. She was stirring the stew, her back to Rosa, who sat wrapped in a blanket near the fire. The stranger hadn't said much since she'd arrived, but her eyes tracked everything. Every gesture Clara made, every creak of the floorboards, every shadow that passed across the window. "You ever cook rabbit?" Clara asked without turning. "No," Rosa said. Her voice was low, but clearer than the night before. "Well, you'll taste it soon enough. Caught one this morning. Not much meat, but it'll warm us through." Clara ladled broth into 2 dented tin bowls and handed one to Rosa, who accepted it with both hands. She sipped carefully, as if waiting for something other than food. Clara watched her a moment. "You're not just running from a man," she said, not as a question. "You're running from men." Rosa's spoon paused midair. "Yes." Clara nodded and returned to her own stew. A gust of wind rattled the cabin shutters. The fire popped loudly, sending a small shower of sparks up the chimney. Clara got up and bolted the door. "Storm's gonna be heavy," she said. "Good thing you found the well when you did. This land doesn't take kindly to strays after sundown." "Is that what I am?" Rosa asked softly. "A stray." Clara looked at her. The woman's face was still marked with dirt and fatigue, but there was steel there too, behind her beauty. "No," she said finally. "Strays don't look you in the eye like that." A moment passed between them, quiet but not empty. Rosa broke it. "I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't think you did. I just left. I had to." Clara nodded. Sometimes leaving is the only right thing left. Another gust hit the cabin, harder this time. The shutters groaned under the pressure, and a branch scraped the roof like fingernails. Clara moved to the window and pulled the curtain back, just enough to peer out. Nothing but rain and trees. Still, something tugged at her gut. "Stay here," she said, grabbing the lantern. "I want to check the barn." Rosa started to rise. "Should I?" "No," Clara cut in. "You sit. Eat. Don't open the door unless you hear me call your name." Rosa nodded, shrinking a little in the fire's glow. Clara stepped out into the storm, lantern swinging at her side. The rain was falling in earnest now, cold and mean, turning the dirt path to thick, sucking mud. She squinted through the dark toward the barn, its silhouette barely visible between lightning flashes. As she neared it, a fresh set of boot prints caught her eye, half swallowed by the downpour, but there. Too big to be hers. Too clean to be old. She didn't panic. She'd lived too long for that. Instead, she turned off the lantern, letting her eyes adjust to the dark. The barn door was slightly ajar. She pressed herself against the wall and listened, breathing. Low. Human. Inside. Then a whisper, and the unmistakable sound of a rifle bolt being checked. Clara stepped back from the door and circled around behind the barn, using the wind to mask her movements. Her fingers found the concealed side panel James had built years ago when he still believed they might need a secret way in or out. She slipped through it silently and reached for the old revolver she kept hidden in the feed bin. There were 3 of them. She saw that now. Hunched down near the hayloft ladder, guns slung across their backs, packs soaked with rain. One of them, tall, bald, with a deep scar running down his cheek, was holding a damp map. The edges were torn. "Cabin's right there," he said. "Girls inside. We wait till lights go out." Clara listened just long enough to mark their faces in her mind. Then she slipped back out unseen. By the time she reached the cabin, her clothes were drenched, her boots heavy with mud. She entered slowly, careful not to startle Rosa. "What is it?" Rosa asked, setting her bowl down. Clara shut the door and bolted it. "They're here." Rosa's face drained of color. "They followed me." "They've been following a while, I guess." Clara hung up her soaked coat. 3 of them, setting up in my barn like they own it. Think they'll wait for dark, then knock real polite." Rosa stood. "I should go. They won't hurt you if—" "You sit back down," Clara said sharply. "You walk into that storm, they'll find you faster. You stay in here. I might have a say in how this ends. But, I said sit. Something in Clara's tone silenced Rosa. She dropped back onto the chair, her hands trembling. Clara moved to the back wall, pulling up the rug and prying loose a floorboard. From underneath, she drew a long canvas-wrapped bundle and laid it across the table. She unrolled it slowly, revealing a pair of worn, well-kept pistols and a Winchester rifle. Rosa stared. "You're not just a widow," she said. Clara gave her a wry look. "No, I'm not." The fire crackled. Wind howled outside. "I was Clara McCoy once," she said. "Rode with men who don't talk about what they saw. Settled scores west of El Paso. Drew faster than most and neater than all. Then James came along. He didn't want the legend. He wanted peace. So I put it all away." She loaded the revolvers with a calm precision. "I swore I'd never pick these up again. But swears bend when the wrong men knock." Rosa looked at her with something close to awe and fear. "You still know how to use them." Clara snapped the revolver shut with a practiced flick of her wrist. "We'll find out." The storm lashed against the windows now, wild and angry. Clara stood with one gun on the table, the other holstered at her side, and the rifle leaning against the wall. "They'll come," Clara said. "And when they do, you do what I say. No heroics." Rosa nodded, her face pale but steady. "And Rosa," Clara added. "Yes, if you've got any secrets left, this is the time to tell me." Rosa opened her mouth, then closed it again. Outside, a tree branch split and crashed into the yard. Clara moved to the window, peering out. Nothing yet, but she knew they were waiting. A deep stillness settled into the cabin, the kind that comes before everything changes. Then Rosa spoke, just above a whisper. "There's gold," she said. Clara turned. "What kind of gold?" "Stolen gold," Rosa answered. "From a man with power. A man who doesn't like loose ends." Lightning struck somewhere close. The cabin rattled. The fire flared. Clara stared at her for a long moment, then reached for the rifle. "Well," she said, "I hope he likes disappointment." And she blew out the lantern. The storm had slowed to a steady whisper of rain against the shingles, a lulling rhythm that might have fooled another woman into sleep. But Clara Bell didn't trust quiet after thunder. Not in the frontier, and certainly not with 3 men curled like coiled snakes in her barn. She sat in the rocker by the fireplace, rifle across her knees, revolver holstered at her hip. Her eyes never strayed far from the door. Rosa slept fitfully on the cot, her brow furrowed even in dreams. Her earlier confession lingered in the air like smoke. There's gold. Stolen gold. From a man with power. Clara hadn't asked more. The truth had a way of rising when the time was right. She only needed enough to know the shape of the storm, and Rosa had given her that. Just past midnight, Clara's ears caught what her eyes could not, a boot on wet wood. Then another, the creak of porch boards under careful weight. She rose slowly, silently, motioning Rosa to wake. Rosa stirred, her eyes wide the moment they opened. "They're here," Clara mouthed. Rosa nodded and slipped quietly off the cot, retreating into the back pantry, where she could watch without being seen. Clara stepped behind the table, rifle raised, and waited. The knock came soft, too soft to be polite. Then a voice, muffled but clear. "Ma'am, storm got us worse than we thought. One of our boys is hurt bad. Could use shelter." Clara didn't answer. "We ain't looking for trouble," the voice continued. "Just a dry spot. We'll pay." She stared at the door, unmoving. Then she spoke. "Calm. Cold. You should have stayed in the barn." Silence. Then the door burst inward, the latch snapping clean. 2 men surged through, one already drawing his pistol. Clara fired before he cleared leather. One clean shot to the chest. He hit the floor hard, dead weight on the pine. The second man ducked behind the wood stove, returning fire blindly. A bullet ricocheted off the stone wall. Clara rolled to cover, pulling her second revolver. A third figure appeared at the window, shattering the glass as he fired into the cabin. Sparks flew from the fireplace iron, but Clara was already moving, low and fast. Rosa screamed from the pantry. Clara popped up from behind the overturned table and fired again, The man by the stove dropped his weapon and clutched his shoulder, cursing. Before he could recover, she was on him, kicking the pistol away and pressing her boot to his throat. "Stay down," she growled. Outside, the third man tried to force the window frame, now half shattered by gunfire. Clara turned toward him, just as Rosa emerged from the pantry, wielding a fire poker with both hands. Without hesitation, Rosa swung it hard into the intruder's face as he pulled himself through the window. He collapsed halfway in, groaning, blood trailing from his brow. Clara stepped forward, rifle aimed. "No more chances," she said. The man froze, one leg still hooked on the sill. "We didn't come for you," he gasped. "I know," Clara replied, "but you knocked on my door." She kicked the window frame, knocking him fully to the ground outside. He groaned, rolled, and tried to crawl. Clara walked through the front door and fired a warning shot inches from his hand. The man froze. Behind her, Rosa sagged against the wall, shaking. Inside the cabin, the wounded outlaw near the stove moaned. Clara returned, checked the man she'd shot first. Dead. One gone. Two left breathing. She bound the man near the stove with rope from the pantry. The one outside, she tied to the porch rail, hands high and tight, rain soaking him clean of blood. Rosa sat on the edge of the cot, watching Clara with wide, unreadable eyes. "You killed him," she said quietly. "I told you I wasn't just a widow." Clara sat down at the table, pouring a splash of whiskey into a chipped tin cup. Her hands didn't shake. Her breath was steady. Rosa didn't speak for a while. Then, "You knew how this would go." "I knew the kind of men who come crawling through the dark for women who don't want to be found." Rosa lowered her eyes. "I wasn't meant to get out." Clara looked at her sharply. "Then why did you?" Rosa hesitated. "Because someone gave me a chance. A porter on the train. He saw me trying to hide. Told me where to jump, how far the town was. Said he'd seen girls like me disappear before. Said I still had time." Clara nodded. "Good man." Rosa's voice cracked. "But it doesn't matter now. They'll keep coming." "They might," Clara agreed. "But now they know someone's waiting for him." Thunder rolled again, distant now. The worst of the storm had passed. Only rain remained, steady, unrelenting. Rosa looked at the bound outlaw near the stove. "He said they didn't come for you." "They didn't," Clara said. "But I came for them." She walked to the porch, staring out into the wet dark. The tied man whimpered, slumped low, the fight gone from him. Clara knelt beside him. "You want to live. You'll talk come morning. You'll tell me who sent you. Where they're hiding. Everything. You don't scare me," he muttered. Clara leaned close. "You should be afraid of the kind of woman who puts her guns away for 20 years, then picks them up again without missing a shot." He said nothing after that. She stood, straightened, and let the rain wash the blood from her boots. Inside, Rosa sat at the table, the firelight catching her features. Worn, yes, but no longer fragile. Something had hardened there. "Do you believe in second lives?" she asked as Clara returned. Clara sat across from her, slow and deliberate. "I don't believe in many things," she said, "but I believe in fire. And you've still got some in you." Outside, dawn was still hours away, but the night no longer felt endless. The rain kept falling, soft now, like the land itself had exhaled. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more danger. But for now, they had the quiet, and the guns were back on the table. Morning broke dry and wind-bitten. The rain had passed in the night, leaving the earth damp and the sky swept clean, a pale wash of gold spilling across the ridge. But the air carried a different kind of weight now, something unfinished, unsettled. Clarabelle felt it in her bones, like an old tune she hadn't heard in years. The cabin smelled of damp wood and gunpowder. Smoke drifted from the hearth, mixing with the metallic tang of blood still staining the floor. Rosa sat quietly at the table, her hands wrapped around a cup of black coffee, gaze fixed on the man bound to the porch post. He was awake now, stiff and bruised, with a swollen lip and eyes narrowed by fear. Clara had fed him a few dry biscuits and left him in the wind. The other one, shoulder-patched and arm-tied, was in the corner under guard. Both outlaws had kept silent, but Clara knew that silence had an edge. She'd seen it before, back when silence was a tool men used to delay justice. "You gonna talk?" she asked him plainly, stepping out onto the porch, revolver in hand but not raised. The man spit into the dirt. "You can shoot me," he muttered. "But that won't stop him." Him? Clara's eyes narrowed. "So there is someone." The man said nothing, but he didn't deny it. Rosa appeared behind Clara in the doorway. "His name is Hatch," she said. Clara turned, but Rosa's eyes were fixed on the outlaw. Marshal turned mercenary, bought by the rail lines to do the work no badge wanted. He hunts women like me, ones who ran with secrets, ones who saw too much. Clara's expression darkened. "And what secret did you run with?" Rosa drew in a long breath. "He killed them, a whole family, burned their homestead and left nothing but ash. I was working in the kitchen. No one noticed I survived. Hatch thought he erased it clean, but I saw. I remembered, and I told someone I shouldn't have." Clara absorbed that in silence. Then she turned back to the outlaw. "How far behind is he?" The man didn't answer. Clara fired one shot into the dirt by his feet. The sound cracked through the morning stillness like thunder. "He'll be here by sundown," the outlaw gasped. "Less, if the horses held." Clara nodded, holstered her gun, and turned back inside. Rosa followed, pale but composed. "What do we do?" she asked. "We get ready," Clara said. "We send a message." "To who?" "To whoever's still got a spine in Dead Branch." She went to the writing desk in the corner, pulled a scrap of paper, and dipped a quill. "Marshal Hatch rides with murderers. 3 sent ahead. 2 live. 1 lies dead. Witness under my roof. If justice still lives here, come. Sundown. Cabin by the well. Clara Bell." She folded the note, tied it with twine, and handed it to Rosa. "You'll take this to the livery. Find Eustace Harrow, gray beard, bad leg. Owes me twice over. He'll spread word." Rosa blinked. "You're sending me?" Clara nodded. "No one'll expect you. You move fast, ride smart. You'll be back before Hatch crosses the mesa." Rosa hesitated, then squared her shoulders. "All right." Clara watched her ride off 20 minutes later, her figure small against the rising dust. For the first time in days, Clara felt the wind carry something else, resolve. She spent the rest of the morning preparing. Boards reinforced. Ammunition counted. The dead man buried under the cottonwood tree, without ceremony. By midday, the sun was high and cruel, and Clara was cleaning her rifle when the voice came from the road. "Clara Bell." It was deep, measured, like a man who never had to raise it twice. She stepped out onto the porch. Hatch was already there, on horseback, dust-coated and sharp-eyed, flanked by 2 more riders. His duster was black, clean at the cuffs. A badge still gleamed on his chest, though dulled by tarnish. "Long time," he said. "Not long enough," she replied. "Got word you've got a girl doesn't belong to you." "I'd say she belongs to herself." He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "She's a thief. A liar. Took something from men who paid well for silence." Clara shrugged. "Funny. She said the same about you." Hatch stepped down from his horse. "You planning to give her over, or die on principle?" "I've buried enough men with principles. Let's see how you feel about witnesses." At that, the cabin door opened. Rosa stepped out, flanked by 2 men Clara hadn't seen since James died. Eustace Harrow stood beside her, holding a battered shotgun, and behind him, for more ranchers, some old, some scarred, all hard-eyed. Hatch paused. His riders shifted uneasily. "You bring a posse, Clara?" "I didn't bring anyone," she said. "They came because they still believe a badge means something. And if it doesn't, well, maybe they just came to see justice done the right way." Hatch's eyes flicked from Clara to the witnesses, then to Rosa, whose chin lifted slightly. "You don't scare easy," he said to her. "No," Rosa replied. "Not anymore." Clara stepped forward, rifle in hand. "You leave now, Hatch. You take your dogs with you and never ride back this way." "You think this ends it?" "I know it begins something." He looked around, weighed the odds. The numbers weren't on his side anymore. "Not today," he said finally. "But I'll see you again." Clara didn't move. Bring a shovel. He mounted, spat into the dirt, and turned his horse. The riders followed him back into the dust. Clara watched until they disappeared behind the ridge. Only then did she let the rifle lower. Rosa stood beside her. You think it's over? No, Clara said. But now it's louder. Now people know. Rosa looked out toward the fading road. He'll try again. He'll have to be quicker next time. The sun began its slow descent. Dust settled. Justice, if it had not yet been delivered, had at least been demanded. And sometimes, Clara thought, that was the beginning of everything. The days that followed were deceptively quiet. The sky stretched blue and endless over the parched land, cicadas thrumming in the sage, the wind a lazy thing slipping through brittle grass. But Clara Belle didn't trust peace. Not when it came this easily, and not when a man like Hatch rode away with a threat still fresh in his mouth. Rosa stayed close, helping around the cabin, her steps lighter than when she'd first arrived. There was something rebuilding in her, something steady, but behind her eyes still flickered a question she hadn't dared to voice. It was Clara who gave it shape, one morning as they shelled beans on the porch. You never told me, Clara said, her tone even. What you really took. Rosa's hand slowed. She didn't look up. I didn't lie. There was gold, hidden under the floorboards of that ranch house before it burned. I wasn't meant to know about it, but I did. And you took it? No, I left it. Clara raised a brow. Rosa finally looked up. I took something worse than gold to a man like Hatch. I took proof. Clara leaned back in her chair. Go on. Rosa reached into her satchel, now dusty from travel, and pulled out a folded paper wrapped in oilskin. She handed it over. Clara unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a worn telegram, the ink still bold. Land cleared. Family removed. Payment secured. Hatch authorized. R. Sims, Western Rail. Clara read it twice. So Hatch wasn't just dirty. He was working under orders. Rosa nodded. The man who gave that order is now the rail's next regional director. They're about to break ground through the old ranch lands, claim what's left. This telegram proves Hatch killed on the company's word. Clara folded the message slowly, hands deliberate. And why bring this to me? Because I didn't just need to hide. I needed someone who remembered how to fight. Clara stared out across the hills, the sun flashing on the distance like silver caught in dust. Then came the sound, faint at first. Hooves. Dozens. She stood fast, eyes narrowing. Rosa rose too, scanning the ridge. From the horizon, riders came. Dust clouds kicked high behind them. A small detachment, no more than 10, but armed and organized. At the front, unmistakable in his black duster, was Hatch. Clara turned to Rosa. Get inside. Lock the back. But we have no backup. Clara's eyes burned with something fierce. We don't need backup. We've got the truth. The horses slowed as they reached the clearing near the well. Hatch dismounted smoothly, like he was stepping into church. This time, he called. I didn't bring talk. Clara stepped off the porch, rifle slung but not raised. You never did. Just bad breath and worse orders. Hatch smiled grimly. You always were too clever for a widow. She took another step forward. And you were always too stupid for a badge. The men behind him spread out. Trained. Disciplined. Not the same ragged crew from before. These aren't outlaws, Clara said. Company men. Rail security. Official now. You've interfered with Western expansion. That's treason in these parts. I've got a better word for it, she said, and pulled the telegram from her pocket. She raised it high. This is your signature. Your orders. Sent over wire. Authorized by a man who's still very much alive. And this, she waved the paper, is going to Washington. Hatch's face didn't change, but his eyes flicked behind her, toward the trees. He wasn't worried. And that's when Clara knew something was off. Then asterisk crack, asterisk. A rifle shot. Clara ducked, the paper torn from her fingers by the bullet. A second shot rang out, but it didn't come from Hatch's men. It came from the ridge. Clara rolled behind the well as more gunfire erupted. From the tree line to the east, horses charged. Eustace Harrow, rifle raised. Behind him, 6 townsfolk, dust-covered and grim, guns drawn. Hatch's men scattered, ducking for cover. Clara saw Rosa appear from the barn, pistol in both hands. She didn't hesitate, just aimed and fired. Chaos reigned. Horses screamed. Bullets tore through the dry air. Clara picked up her rifle and aimed low, disabling, not killing. She didn't want martyrs. She wanted witnesses. Within minutes, it was over. Hatch lay on the ground, blood seeping from a shoulder wound. His men had dropped their weapons. Some had run. Most now knelt in the dust. Clara approached, the telegram clutched in her hand. "You should have stayed gone." He coughed. "You won't get far with that paper. The company owns judges, owns press. You think a few dusty ranchers will stop a railroad?" "No," Clara said, "but one truth in the right hands can slow it down." Behind her, Rosa stepped forward, breathing hard. "I never wanted revenge," Rosa said, "just to be believed." "You're not just believed," Clara said. "You're witnessed." The telegram would make its way to federal agents in Cheyenne within the week. And though the company's wheels turned slow, men like Hatch would find fewer shadows to hide in. As the sun dipped behind the canyon rim, casting the land in bronze, Clara stood by the well and looked across the dust-hung sky. Rosa came to stand beside her. "What now?" Rosa asked. Clara smiled. "Now you start again. You both do. You're not coming." Clara looked eastward, where the sky softened into night. "No. There's someone I need to visit. Someone I promised I'd never leave behind." She didn't need to say James's name. Rosa nodded. They said nothing more. Clara saddled her horse the next morning. As she rode off, Rosa watched from the porch, holding the telegram like a lantern. The frontier had not changed. But perhaps now it had remembered. And somewhere down that long road, another story was waiting to begin.